Welcome to the Living Aware Parenting podcast. My name's Marion Rose, PhD, and I am so glad to be sharing about aware parenting with you. Aware parenting was created by Aletha Solter, PhD. You can find her work at the Aware Parenting Institute website at www.awareparenting.com. I'm a Level 2 Aware Parenting instructor and the Regional Coordinator for Australia, New Zealand and Indonesia. I've been an aware parenting instructor since 2005, and I've been practicing aware parenting since my daughter, the first of my two children, was a baby in 2002. In the Living Aware Parenting podcast, I share about Aletha Solter's work in the most distilled and concise way that I can to support parents to understand the philosophy of this groundbreaking approach, the practices and ways to live and embody this life-changing work. I've been fascinated by this work for more than 2 decades, and my understanding of it becomes more and more nuanced over time. I am so willing for this podcast to bring you even more clarity, compassion and deep care in your own unique journey. Thank you for coming on this voyage of discovery with me. Aware parenting is based on 4 basic assumptions, 3 core aspects and 10 principles. These are all on the Aware Parenting Institute website, which is awareparenting.com. In today's episode, I'm going to share them with you, adding some extra information along the way and with a bit of my own flavour added. If you're watching the video, I'm actually looking at Aletha's website here. And if you are listening to the audio and you would like to have a look at her website and go through that with me, I invite you to go and have a look now if you want to. So let's scroll down and start with the 4 basic assumptions of aware parenting. So these assumptions are adapted from Aletha Solter's book, The Aware Baby, which I've got right here at the bottom of the pile. The Aware Baby, very well loved copy. Life-changing, amazing book. And again, I'm going to be sharing a few little bits along the way. So the first and such a core part of aware parenting is that children know what they need for optimal physical, emotional and intellectual development. In other words, they have deep innate wisdom which we can learn to understand and support. And how different is this from still what's around in this culture, where there's really often the opposite of that, the opposite belief about children. Second, if children's needs are met and they are not hurt or stressed, they will be cooperative, compassionate, and non-violent. So again, this is a completely different understanding to the current narrative about the true nature of children and the cause of their behaviours. Really looking at children's needs and then adding this extra piece in relation to being hurt or stressed, which I'm going to talk more about. And third, children are extremely vulnerable. Stress, trauma or unmet needs can have long-lasting negative effects on their behaviour. And so when we understand this as parents and carers, we're invited to protect them from stress and trauma wherever possible and understand when unhealed stress and trauma is affecting them and actually how much of the challenging behaviours that parents find difficult in parenting is actually really based on stress, trauma and unmet needs. Again, such a different way of looking at children. And then fourth, children can recover from the effects of stress and trauma and they are born knowing how to do so. So when we understand how they do that and how to cooperate with that, this is part of really understanding their innate wisdom and knowing what to do to again, cooperate with that. Again, these are completely different ways of looking at children. These 4 assumptions transform parenting on the head, they transform our experience as parents, and they transform a child's experience. So I'll go through them again. Just in summary, children know what they need. They know what they need for optimum physical, emotional and intellectual development. If their needs are met and they are not hurt or stressed, they will be cooperative, compassionate, and non-violent, which is, of course, how we want them to be. And, of course, it's so much more enjoyable for them and us if they are that more of the time. And they're extremely vulnerable. Stress, trauma, or unmet needs can have long-lasting negative effects on their behaviour. This invites us as parents and carers to really support them and to protect them wherever possible. And that they can recover from the effects of stress and trauma, and they are born knowing how to do so. I really invite you to hold these in mind, to come back to this list of 4 things. And if aware parenting resonates with you, for these to really sink in, because they change everything. So that is those 4 basic assumptions. So let's go next to the 3 aspects of aware parenting. So the 3 aspects are attachment style parenting, non-punitive discipline, and healing from stress and trauma. So attachment style parenting includes things like natural childbirth and early bonding. So lots of closeness, lots of physical contact, prolonged breastfeeding, prompt responsiveness to crying, and sensitive attunement. So aware parenting is a form of attachment style parenting, and it's different from what we call classical attachment parenting and what I also call early separation paradigms. So it really holds attachment style parenting, connection, bonding, sensitive attunement as central, and has these other elements that really differentiates it from what most people would see as attachment parenting, which we call classical attachment parenting. So then there's non-punitive discipline. So that means no punishments of any kind, including spanking, timeout, and artificial consequences, no rewards or bribes, a search for underlying needs and feelings, anger management for parents, and peaceful conflict resolution, such as family meetings and mediation. And so again, the key difference here to many other paradigms is having specific ways not only to respond to challenging behaviours, but to also prevent them in the first place, because of really understanding the true cause of children's behaviour, why they do what they do. And that's really including this 3rd piece. And this 3rd aspect is healing from stress and trauma. So as part of that, it's really recognising that stress and trauma, including unmet needs, are primary causes of behavioural and emotional problems. There's an emphasis on the prevention of stress and trauma, and there's a recognition of the healing effects of play, laughter, and crying in the context of a loving parent-child relationship. So again, coming back to this is all in the context of that secure attachment, that attunement, that closeness, that love. So then there is respectful, empathic listening and acceptance of children's emotions. Now, this is the part that's often the most different from many other parenting paradigms, which means that often people think it's the main part of aware parenting or the only part of aware parenting. And it is really significant, it is really important, it is what really does mark aware parenting as different from most other paradigms, because it's really this welcoming of not only the little bits of the upset, but the big rage and the big crying. And I'm here to remind you that it's actually also 3rd in the list. So it's not first in the aspects of aware parenting, it is 3rd. So it really is based on these foundations of connection and attachment as that core foundation. And this 2nd part of really looking for the underlying reasons for children's behaviour. And then it comes upon the top of that. So I'm really here to remind you, yes, it's really different. Yes, it's really important in aware parenting. And it's the 3rd in those aspects. So I'll just go through them again one more time. Number 1, the first aspect is attachment style parenting, which is all about lots of closeness, sensitive attunement, prompt responsiveness to crying. The second is non-punitive discipline, which instead of using punishments and rewards, it's really looking at the underlying cause for behaviour, which is really looking at needs and feelings. And then the third aspect is both preventing stress and trauma and supporting children to heal from it, cooperating with their innate wisdom for exactly how to do that, which is play and laughter and crying and raging within this context of a loving parent-child relationship. So let's go to the 10 principles of aware parenting. So I have real passion for both language and compassion. So as I was showing before, each of us as aware parenting instructors bring our own flavour to sharing about aware parenting. And so I'm going to read out the precise languaging on Aletha's website, on the Aware Parenting Institute website. And if it were me, I might word this a little bit differently, because parents so often come to me and they say, I'm not practicing aware parenting because today I was really busy at work and I didn't have hardly any connection with my child. Or I'm not practicing aware parenting because I reacted to my child and I was harsh to them briefly before I was then able to repair. Or I wasn't able to listen to their feelings, or they're not sharing their feelings with me and they're suppressing their feelings, so I'm not practicing aware parenting. And so what I like to say is, if you understand these elements that I'm sharing with you today and they resonate with you and you're aiming to practice those, then I would say you are practicing aware parenting. We are all going to have days, and myself included. I had many days when my children were younger where the cultural setup of very little support for parents, our own cultural conditioning, including not understanding all of this information that I'm sharing with you, and our own painful unexpressed feelings from our own childhood, which didn't get supported and listened to in these ways I'm talking about, will mean that it can be really hard sometimes to practice these things. This is a sign for even more self-compassion, even more support, not a judgment of ourselves that we are not practicing aware parenting. So I might change the wording a little bit to say something like, when we're practicing aware parenting, we're aiming to fill our children's needs for physical contact, holding, cuddling, and we aim not to ever worry about the concept of spoiling our children. So I wonder how you feel when you hear that. I really invite you to hear this information in a way that really supports you to understand that this can be really hard. Practicing aware parenting can be really hard in a culture that doesn't support it, in a culture that actually works against it in many ways, and when we are learning these new ways of thinking about children and human beings, and when we have our own painful feelings bubbling up to be heard. So, given that context, I'm going to read them out. I'll read number 1. Aware parents feel their children's needs for physical contact, holding and cuddling. They do not worry about spoiling their children. So here's the foundation again. It's connection and attachment. These are the basis for all the other parts of aware parenting. And it's an old cultural idea, hasn't it, being that there's such a thing as spoiling a child. It was very prominent in the 1950s, in particular, in more westernized, industrialized cultures. But it's been going on for a long time in what I would say more colonized cultures. That would be, again, my languaging. So, number 2, aware parents accept the entire range of emotions and listen non-judgmentally to children's expressions of feelings. They realise that they cannot prevent all sadness, anger or frustration, and they do not attempt to stop children from releasing painful feelings through crying or raging. So again, this is really where aware parenting is different to so many other approaches, because it's really seeing that children's big feelings are not only natural and normal, but they're actually how they heal from stress and trauma when we are listening lovingly. And it's often the most challenging for us as parents because most of us did not receive this. So we're aiming to understand not only that children have these innate needs for their feelings to be welcome and heard, but that actually these processes, that crying and raging, big, loud crying and raging, actually, because it's part of their innate ways from healing from stress and trauma, actually helps them feel more relaxed and present, actually helps them sleep more easily, actually helps them be naturally non-violent, actually helps prevent or reduce most of the things that parents find challenging. Number 3, aware parents offer age-appropriate stimulation and trust children to learn at their own rate and in their own way. They do not try to hurry children on to new stages of development. So again, this comes back to a deep trust in the innate wisdom of children, and us as parents being here to support that wisdom rather than to go at some externally prescribed pace. And again, that this can be really hard because most of us did not experience this, and the culture that most of us live in, if you're watching this or listening to this, really doesn't trust children's own natural development rate and pace, and does often hurry that up or slow that down. So again, if you find this hard at times or many times, I am sending you so much love. And of course you do. It's really normal and natural in this culture to find that hard. So, number 4, aware parents offer encouragement for learning new skills, but do not judge children's performance with either criticism or evaluative praise. So criticism, evaluative praise, and punishments and rewards are actually painful for children. They're actually painful for all of us if we are willing to feel the feelings. And they not only don't actually work in the long term, but they actually lead to more unwanted outcomes. So there's all kinds of research that shows, for example, that not only are punishments related to unenjoyable outcomes, but so are rewards. So we're really here to support children, to support their own innate wisdom, their own natural development, without adding in extra things that actually prevent them from thriving and becoming all that they can be. Number 5, aware parents spend time each day giving full attention to their children. During this special quality time, they observe, listen, respond, and join in with their children's play if invited to do so, but they do not direct the children's activities. So again, this comes back to the centrality of connection and presence, awareness in aware parenting, whilst again having deep compassion for parents for the lack of support and community in most modern cultural setups and in many families. So many families are busy, many parents are working, many parents find it hard to do this, and the invitation is, can you find time to do this even though it's hard? Even small periods of time doing this makes a difference to children and makes a difference to the parent-child relationship. Number 6, aware parents protect children from danger, but they do not attempt to prevent all of their children's mistakes, problems, or conflicts. So again, protecting children from stress and trauma where possible is part of aspect 3 that I shared about. But it's impossible and actually not helpful for children to never come up against challenge. For example, if we think about it, naturally as children develop skills such as crawling, walking and talking, riding a bike, reading and writing, they will often experience frustration and challenge. And often that's just an innate part of the process of learning. We can be here to support them with their feelings, with those processes, but trying to protect them from all of these processes actually leads to outcomes that we don't want. Number 7, aware parents encourage children to be autonomous problem solvers and help only when needed. They do not solve their children's problems for them. So this comes from the next part. And again, resilience comes through experience and learning, children learning for themselves with our support in, developmentally apt ways, but that's how they learn. And actually that's true resilience. And where they do experience painful things, we can support them to heal from those with those innate healing mechanisms that they have. So this is part of trusting the innate wisdom, curiosity, and innate love of learning that children have. So as much as possible, being present with them to understand when they need our help and when they want to do things themselves is part of this process. And again, this can be really hard for many of us because most of us were either had our parents in doing things and preventing us from actually exploring and learning ourselves, or being too distant and actually not supporting us when we needed help. So being there connected with them to support them in this process, again, can be really hard for us. And if you find it hard, that's a signal again for more compassion, more support, not judgment. Number 8, aware parents set reasonable boundaries and limits, gently guide children towards acceptable behaviour, and consider everyone's needs when solving conflicts. They do not control children with bribes, rewards, threats, or punishments of any kind. So again, this is part of the non-punitive discipline, really understanding that all of those bribes, rewards, threats, and punishments actually lead to more of the behaviours that we don't want, more of the outcomes that we don't want, that we're here to support children, including considering everyone's needs, including parents' needs, if it's 2 siblings, to supporting both siblings or all the siblings or all the friends. So it's not this kind of hands-off, let them do it all themselves, but it's also not actually preventing challenges completely. It's supporting them, and that does include what we call in aware parenting limits and loving limits. And in a future episode, I'll share about the difference between limits and loving limits. Limits are still loving, and they're different from loving limits. Number 9, aware parents take care of themselves and are honest about their own needs and feelings. They do not sacrifice themselves to the point of becoming resentful. This again is central. Meeting our own needs is vital if we're going to be able to meet the needs of our child or children and listen to their feelings. And again, I really want to acknowledge for most of us this journey of understanding our own needs and feelings, taking responsibility for them, being honest about them, being willing for our needs to be met and our feelings to be heard is often part of the parallel journey. In my languaging, parallel journey whilst we're parenting. We often are learning about these whilst we are parenting. And many of us do sacrifice ourselves. Many of us do that and become resentful. Many of us do not listen to ourselves, and we do things that we actually don't want to do, and we get resentful. So again, I would see this as more of a process and a journey that we're on when practicing aware parenting. And again, if we are not meeting our own needs, which again, I would like to include the cultural context. We are, I would say, intrinsically meant to live in community where finding ways to get everyone's needs met is a central part of the whole system. We live in a culture where for most of us, we live in either nuclear families or we're single parents, or we live in smaller family groups where actually it becomes much harder for parents to get their needs met. So I really think that is so important to acknowledge. If your needs are not getting met, I invite you to not blame yourself and to see that it's intrinsically going to be much harder to get our needs met within this culture. And that most of us, and particularly as women, we were taught to override our needs, to not know what we needed, to not ask for what we needed. And so this whole not listening to ourselves and becoming resentful can be very common and can be quite a journey to get free from. So again, I'm here to remind you that's often part of the process. And so this really fits into number 10, which is aware parents strive to be aware of the ways in which their own childhood pain interferes with their ability to be good parents, and they make conscious efforts to avoid passing on their own hurts to their children. So again, with my passion for language, I might word that a little bit differently. I would probably say with their ability to practice aware parenting. And again, this is part of the journey, that it's inevitable that because we weren't brought up with aware parenting, we will have lots of unexpressed feelings that will inevitably show up in our parenting, because that's also how our innate healing is happening. And that is why it's so essential to be doing exactly this, understanding and finding ways which are unique for all of us. For some of us that will be receiving support, some of us will be journaling, some of us will be going out in nature and raging out while walking in the mountains. This is a big part of the practice of aware parenting. And in aware parenting, there are no set ways of how to do that. So each of us do have different ways. There are so many different ways in which we can explore how our past is showing up in the present and affecting our parenting. And aware parenting instructors are not intrinsically trained in this last aspect in terms of diving in deep into that healing process unless they have additional training in modalities which do this, there are many, many, many healing modalities. So the Marion method, which I've developed, is part of that process, which you can find out more about on my other podcast, the Marion Rose podcast. So there are many, I'm just repeating myself quite a lot here, there are many different approaches which support parents to heal from the pain from their own childhood. And I invite you to fit into which methodology, practice, process resonates with you. So, I wonder how you're feeling and what you're thinking now. Do you have any questions about aware parenting? In future episodes, I'm intending to answer all the questions that I've heard in the last couple of decades and to go into all of the questions that you might have or you might have ever had or you might come across in concise, clear ways. And if you do have particular requests, you'd like me to explore particular things in future episodes, I invite you to send me an email or a message wherever we connect. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode. I'm so willing for you to have found it helpful. If you'd like further resources, here is a summary of the details. You can find the full information in the show notes. I do have another podcast, the Marion Rose podcast, where I talk about all my other interests and offerings. It includes the Marion method work, which consists of reparenting as well as what I call reculturing, which includes reclaiming our yeses and nos, getting free from what I call disconnected domination culture conditioning, such as guilt and coercion, and lots more. As of September 2025, Aletha Solter PhD has 7 published books, which you can find on her website, which is awareparenting.com/books.htm. And as of September 2025, I have 4 solo published books for parents and 2 for children, with more coming soon. You can also find out about those on my website, which is marionrose.net/books. In the show notes, I also share links for my free and paid online courses, one-to-one mentoring and social media. I also give information about becoming an aware parenting instructor in my region and finding other aware parenting instructors to work with. See you in the next episode.